Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
Hello, this video will give you section-wise summary of the poem An Epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot, written by Alexander Pope. First of all, let's have a brief introduction to the poem. An Epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot is a satirical poem written by Alexander Pope in 1734. It is addressed to Pope's friend John Arbuthnot, a physician and a member of the Scriblerus Club, a group of writers including Jonathan Swift and John Gay. In this poem, Pope defends himself and his literary friends against various attacks and criticisms from contemporary poets and critics. The poem serves as a form of self-defense and a reflection on the nature of literary fame and the challenge faced by writers in Pope's time. Pope uses the epistolary form to address Arbuthnot directly, expressing his views on poetry, personal attacks, and the role of satire. The poem is a mix of personal elements, literary criticism, and satirical commentary on the social and political aspects of the time. Overall, it is a significant work in Pope's body of satirical writings, showcasing his wit and skill in addressing both personal and literary issues. Let us now look at the summary. Part first, lines 1 to 68. The poem begins with Pope telling his servant John to close the door because he is worried about letting in aspiring poets who act like dogs. Pope thinks these poets resembling Bedlam and Parnassus are roaming the streets. He describes them as having papers in hand and a fiery look in their eyes. No matter where Pope goes, these poets follow him, even entering his home by climbing walls and shrubs. People from everywhere come to Pope's house to criticize him. Eventually, Pope confides in Dr. Arbuthnot, calling him a friend. Pope sees his friend's illness and the troublesome poets as a plague, leaving him confused about how to handle the situation. The critics try to manipulate Pope by asking for corrections, bribing him, and even resorting to blackmail. Summary of Part 2, lines 69 to 124. In the second part, Pope warns about the dangers of popularity and expands on the comparison to Midas. He mocks lesser poets using the image of Midas symbolizing their unreliability. Pope criticizes poets like Cole, Hawley, Bevis, Bishop Philippus, and Sappho. Arbuthnot cautions Pope not to criticize them directly with their names. Pope insists on honesty, declaring he won't shy away from calling a fool a fool. He recounts how some playwrights seek his recommendation for rejected scripts, flattering him by comparing him to Ovid, Hercules, and Alexander the Great. Pope rejects such flattery, considering himself an ordinary man. Summary of Part 3, lines 125 to 146. This section discusses Pope's life as a writer. He explains why he writes, emphasizing that it is not an obligation. Learning numbers was challenging for him, but writing poetry comes easily. No one compelled him to write. He did it on his own. Pope writes because his friends like Swift, Granville, Congreve, and others enjoy reading his poetry. It is not driven by personal motives like love for his wife. When Arbuthnot questions why Pope publishes his works, Pope responds that it is because his friends appreciate and praise his poetry. Even Dryden encourages him to write and publish, leading Pope to share his works. Summary of Part 4, lines 147 to 260. In this part of the poem, Pope explains why he used satire to criticize other poets. He doesn't care about those who criticize him, dismissing them as donkeys and fools. Despite trying to be friendly, some cheap critics still attack him. Pope is open to accepting valid criticism. He satirizes Ambrose Philippus, calling him a plagiarist who copies from Greek literature to make money. If Ambrose tries to be original, he can barely write 8 lines a year. Pope then criticized Edison, acknowledging his genius but accusing him of wanting to dominate the literary world and considering himself the greatest writer. Pope calls Edison a coward for attacking writers but fearing retaliation. Summary of Part 5, lines 261 to 304. In this section, Pope talks about his current outlook on life and career. He requests poetasters to let him live peacefully. He reveals that he lives in debt and is just an ordinary person who regularly prays to God. Pope emphasizes that only liars should fear his satire and criticism. Those with good intentions and honest behavior have no reason to be afraid of him. Summary of Part 6, lines 305 to 333. In this section, Pope criticizes Lord Hervey using the name Sporus. When Arbuthnot hears the name Sporus, he scolds Pope. Sporus is described as a man who drinks donkey's milk and can only manage to kill a butterfly with his carriage wheels. He is so senseless that he can't distinguish satire from other types of poems. While Pope prides himself on independent judgment, Hervey is portrayed as someone who says anything to please the court and government, valuing glamour, sensual pleasure, and social advancement. Additionally, Hervey's homosexuality is highlighted, and he is characterized not just as a man-woman, but as an animal demon and shape-changer, akin to Saturn. Summary of Part 7, lines 334 to 490. In this part, Pope gives his final self-portrait, listing the virtues he wants Arbuthnot to see in him. He asserts that he has never been a slave to luck, portraying himself as bold and courageous. Pope emphasizes that he has never used flattery for selfish gain and takes a stand against his enemies and critics. He credits his good upbringing to his peace-loving and patriotic parents who lived happily in England. Pope aspires to lead a similar life. The poem ends with Pope praying for Arbuthnot's happiness, peace, and prosperity.